The vanished atom bombs, America's forgotten nuclear nightmares. In the tense years of the Cold War, when nuclear brinkmanship defined the global order, the United States possessed the largest and most advanced atomic arsenal in human history. These were weapons so devastating that a single detonation could erase a city in seconds. Every warhead was guarded, tracked, and controlled with military precision, or so the world was told. But hidden in classified files and buried in obscure accident reports lies a startling truth. Some of these bombs simply vanished. Between the 1950s and the late 1980s, a series of mysterious events, officially called Broken Arrow incidents, saw fully armed nuclear bombs lost over oceans, buried in swamps, or scattered across foreign soil. Some were retrieved, others never found. The U.S. government often downplayed these accidents, offering vague reassurances, while the full extent of what was lost and where remained hidden from public view. These were not minor mistakes. We are talking about hydrogen bombs with yields dozens of times greater than the ones dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, vanishing without a trace. The possibility that some might still lie undetected, silently rusting away, is more than just a chilling historical footnote. It is a living question mark hanging over our world. Today, we will uncover the hidden history of America's lost nuclear weapons, the terrifying accidents that led to their disappearance, and the lingering danger they still pose. The first thing to understand about these so-called broken arrow incidents is that they were not rare, freak accidents. The official U.S. Department of Defense definition for a broken arrow is an unexpected event involving nuclear weapons that results in the accidental launching, firing, detonating, theft, or loss of the weapon. By that definition, there have been at least 32 confirmed incidents during the Cold War, and many experts suspect the true number is far higher. The reason: classified military files, destroyed documents, and carefully worded press statements that hid more than they revealed. Let's start with one of the most famous and chilling cases, the 1966 Palomares incident. On January 17, 1966, a B-52 bomber collided midair with a refueling plane over the coast of Spain. The bomber was carrying 4 hydrogen bombs. 3 were recovered quickly on land, though 2 had ruptured and spread radioactive plutonium dust across a wide area. The 4th bomb. It was missing for nearly 3 months, lying at the bottom of the Mediterranean Sea. A massive U.S. Navy search involving submarines, sonar sweeps, and divers finally recovered it in April. The official line claimed everything was safe, but to this day, parts of Palomares remain contaminated, and the U.S. quietly paid Spain for cleanup decades later. Then, there's the 1968 Thule Air Base disaster in Greenland. Another B-52, this one on an airborne alert mission to deter Soviet attacks, crashed near the Arctic Circle. 4 nuclear bombs were on board. The crash scattered radioactive debris across the ice and snow, prompting a hazardous cleanup in brutal winter conditions. But some researchers and former workers have long claimed that one of the bombs was never fully recovered, with parts of it or possibly the entire weapon still buried beneath shifting ice. Even more unsettling is the 1958 Tybee Island incident. In February of that year, a U.S. Air Force jet accidentally dropped a 7,600-pound Mark 15 hydrogen bomb off the coast of Georgia after a mid-air collision. The Air Force searched extensively, but the bomb was never found. Officials assured the public that the weapon was not armed with a nuclear core. Yet declassified memos from the time suggest otherwise. If the core was indeed present, that means an intact thermonuclear device lies somewhere in the waters near Savannah, its exact location unknown. And these are just the incidents we know about. Several cases remain shrouded in secrecy, such as a 1950 crash near the British Columbia coast, where a U.S. bomber jettisoned a nuclear weapon before plunging into the ocean. Canada was told the weapon had no fissile material, but Canadian fishermen later reported unusual debris and unexplained illnesses. Without transparent records, it's impossible to know the truth. The consequences of these missing weapons are twofold: immediate danger at the time of loss, and long-term environmental and geopolitical risks. Even a disarmed hydrogen bomb can contain several hundred pounds of high explosives and uranium or plutonium, capable of spreading deadly contamination if disturbed. Moreover, the knowledge that such weapons were lost and possibly never recovered has fueled fears that some could be found by unauthorized actors. One of the most worrying aspects is how easily these events were concealed. During the Cold War, the U.S. government considered public knowledge of nuclear accidents a national security threat, fearing it would embolden the Soviet Union or damage alliances. As a result, entire incidents were omitted from official records for decades. In some cases, they were only revealed thanks to whistleblowers, declassified files, or investigative journalists willing to dig through thousands of pages of heavily redacted documents. But perhaps the most haunting detail is this: nuclear weapons are not small, disposable devices. They are massive, complex machines, often weighing several tons. For one to simply disappear defies common sense unless you accept that secrecy and logistical chaos allowed such losses to happen. If you imagine a weapon larger than a car, capable of annihilating an entire city, vanishing without explanation, you begin to understand why historians and nuclear experts view these incidents not as isolated mistakes, but as symptoms of a dangerously overextended military machine. In the next part, we will delve into the official list of America's lost nuclear weapons, separating documented fact from plausible rumor, and explore the eerie question: could some of them still be out there, silently waiting to be found? When you begin to map out the confirmed and suspected cases of lost U.S. nuclear weapons, the picture becomes unsettlingly clear. This is not a handful of freak accidents, but a recurring pattern across decades. The official figure 32 incidents is likely a floor, not a ceiling. Let's look at some of the most notable examples, in chronological order, to see just how frequent and geographically scattered these losses truly were. 1. February 13th, 1950, British Columbia, Canada. A U.S. Air Force B-36 bomber was on a simulated combat mission carrying a Mark IV nuclear bomb, similar in design to the Fat Man dropped on Nagasaki, when it experienced severe mechanical trouble. To lighten the aircraft before ditching, the crew jettisoned the bomb into the Pacific Ocean. Officially, the bomb lacked its plutonium core, but it still contained thousands of pounds of conventional explosives and uranium components. The weapon has never been recovered. 2. March 10th, 1956, Mediterranean Sea. A B-47 bomber vanished without a trace during a flight from Florida to Morocco. It was carrying 2 nuclear weapon cores, no wreckage, no debris, no radio distress calls, just silence. The families of the missing crew never received clear answers, and the cargo's final resting place remains unknown. 3. February 5th, 1958, Tybee Island, Georgia. This is the infamous Mark 15 hydrogen bomb incident mentioned earlier. What makes this case extraordinary is the proximity to a populated area. Despite repeated searches, including one as recently as the 2000s, the bomb has never been located. Local legends claim fishermen occasionally haul up strange metal objects from the area, though none have been confirmed as bomb components. 4. January 24th, 1961, Goldsboro, North Carolina. A B-52 broke apart mid-air, dropping 2 hydrogen bombs onto farmland below. One of them nearly detonated if not for a single low-voltage safety switch that prevented it. While one bomb was recovered, parts of the second, including its uranium core, remain buried deep underground. deemed too dangerous to remove. A permanent no-dig zone exists to this day over the site. 5. December 5th, 1965. Philippine Sea, AU-S, Navy A-4. Skyhawk attack aircraft, armed with a B-43 nuclear bomb, rolled off the deck of the aircraft carrier USS Ticonderoga and sank in 16,000 feet of water. The incident occurred just 70 miles from Japanese territory, sparking decades of diplomatic sensitivity. The bomb and the pilot were never recovered. 6. January 17th, 1966. Palomares, Spain. We covered this earlier, but it bears repeating. 4 hydrogen bombs aboard a B-52 fell over Spain after a mid-air collision. 2 ruptured on land. 1 landed intact in a dry riverbed, and the 4th spent months at the bottom of the sea. Even after its recovery, contamination lingered for decades, with cleanup costs quietly mounting long after the headlines faded. 7. January 21st, 1968. Thule, Greenland. The crash near Thule Air Base not only spread radioactive debris, but also left questions about whether one bomb's secondary stage was truly recovered. Danish workers involved in the cleanup later sued for health damages, claiming exposure to dangerous levels of radiation. What's striking about these cases is the variety of causes: mechanical failure, human error, bad weather, and even simple mishandling during transport. Yet the outcome is always the same: nuclear weapons or components ending up outside of secure control, sometimes permanently. From a strategic perspective, the Cold War doctrine of airborne alert missions, keeping bombers in the air 24/7 to reduce vulnerability to a Soviet first strike, greatly increased the risk of accidents. Bombers flew over oceans, coastlines, and foreign countries, often carrying fully armed hydrogen bombs. The math was unforgiving: the more weapons you kept in motion, the greater the odds that some would be lost. Beyond the official list, there are unconfirmed or disputed incidents that refuse to die in rumor. For example, persistent claims exist of a U.S. submarine losing a nuclear-tipped torpedo in the Atlantic in the late 1960s, though no record has ever been released. Some historians suspect that diplomatic agreements with allied nations helped suppress public disclosure after all. Admitting that you dropped a thermonuclear bomb in someone else's backyard is not a great way to maintain alliances. Equally disturbing is the possibility that some weapons may not be missing in the sense of being completely lost. They could have been recovered by foreign powers. The Soviet Union, with its extensive spy network and ocean recovery capabilities, might have been able to salvage at least components from certain incidents. While there is no direct proof, the possibility has been enough to keep intelligence agencies awake at night. The environmental risks are also far from hypothetical. Many of these bombs contained plutonium, one of the most toxic substances known to science, with a half-life of 24,000 years. Even without a nuclear detonation, corroding bomb casings on the ocean floor could eventually release dangerous materials into marine ecosystems, affecting food chains and coastal communities. And then there's the psychological impact. The very idea that somewhere, at the bottom of the ocean or buried beneath farmland, lie city-killing weapons that no one is actively monitoring is enough to unsettle even the most rational observer. It challenges the notion that nuclear arsenals are under perfect control, revealing instead a system prone to human fallibility and technological failure. In the next section, we will explore how these incidents were hidden from the public, the role of media manipulation, and why the U.S. government has never admitted the full scope of its lost nuclear weapons problem. That's where the story moves from dangerous accidents to deliberate secrecy and perhaps cover-ups that still hold relevance today. The most chilling aspect of America's lost nuclear weapons may not be the accidents themselves, but the silence that followed. In each of the documented cases, there is a consistent pattern: rapid military containment, vague public statements, and a long trail of missing or heavily redacted documents. Step 1. Immediate containment. Whenever an incident occurred, the first priority was not always recovery of the weapon, it was control of information. Military police secured the area, reporters were kept away, and local authorities were often told only the bare minimum. In some cases, even local rescue teams were denied access. The 1961 Goldsboro incident, for example, was initially described to the public as a routine training mishap involving dummy munitions. The reality that 2 live hydrogen bombs had fallen on U.S. soil did not surface until decades later through declassified documents. Step 2. Ambiguity and denial. The Pentagon's public statements often leaned heavily on ambiguity. Words like practice device or non-nuclear training component were used liberally, even if the device in question contained actual nuclear material. This allowed officials to technically avoid lying, while still misleading the public. For the 1950 British Columbia loss, press releases emphasized that the bomb posed no danger because it was incomplete. What they did not mention was that the incomplete weapon still contained radioactive uranium that could contaminate the marine environment for centuries. Step 3. Classification and forgetting. Many accident reports were immediately classified at the highest levels, making them inaccessible to journalists, lawmakers, and even military personnel not directly involved in recovery efforts. Over time, public memory faded, and the events slipped into obscurity. Without sustained coverage, there was little political pressure to declassify or investigate further. This tight-lipped strategy was not accidental. It was part of a larger Cold War information policy. In the 1950s and 1960s, the U.S. government's approach to nuclear accidents was shaped by the need to project an image of flawless control over its arsenal. Any admission of lost weapons could be exploited by Soviet propaganda to undermine American credibility. The media's complicity. It's also important to remember that during the height of the Cold War, mainstream media was far less adversarial toward the Pentagon than it is today. Major newspapers often relied on military press releases as their primary source of information, and questioning official narratives on nuclear issues was considered borderline unpatriotic. In some cases, editors were reportedly contacted directly by military officials and asked politely but firmly to avoid publishing certain details for national security reasons. The result was a feedback loop. Minimal press coverage kept the public unaware, which in turn reduced pressure on politicians to demand accountability. By the time a particular incident might have become a scandal, it was already years old and buried under more immediate headlines. The conspiracy layer. Beyond the documented cases of official secrecy, there are persistent rumors of far darker explanations. Some researchers believe that certain lost weapons were never truly lost. They were intentionally dumped in remote locations to avoid the political or logistical cost of recovery. In this theory, a damaged hydrogen bomb resting on the ocean floor posed less of a political risk than a recovery operation that might expose the extent of the problem. Others go further, suggesting that a handful of these missing bombs may have been covertly transferred to allied nations for use in contingency plans outside the constraints of public treaties. Under this view, the loss was a cover story for clandestine proliferation arming certain allies with nuclear capability without openly defying the Non-Proliferation Treaty. Why this still matters. The idea that these incidents belong to a bygone Cold War era is dangerously misleading. The environmental and security risks of missing nuclear weapons do not fade with time. Plutonium remains deadly for thousands of years. Corrosion of bomb casings could release radioactive material into water systems or soil. Even if a nuclear detonation is no longer possible, contamination can cause cancers, birth defects, and ecosystem collapse. Moreover, technological advances in undersea recovery make it possible that nations, or even well-funded non-state actors, could locate and retrieve lost weapons today. A Mark 15 hydrogen bomb from 1958 may seem outdated, but its fissile material is still weapons grade. The official line. Today, the Department of Defense maintains that no missing nuclear weapon poses a significant threat to public safety. Yet, when pressed for specifics, exact coordinates, recovery status, environmental testing data, the answers remain vague or withheld. Even in the age of the Freedom of Information Act, entire pages of accident reports are often blacked out, citing national defense or foreign policy exemptions. In recent years, independent researchers and environmental groups have begun using sonar mapping and submersible drones to search for some of these missing weapons. While none have been definitively located, the very fact that civilians are attempting such missions underscores a deep public distrust of official reassurances. And here's where the conspiracy mindset thrives. When governments refuse to answer straightforward questions. Where is the Tybee Island bomb? Has the Goldsboro uranium migrated into groundwater? People begin to suspect that the truth must be worse than the lie. In the next section, we will examine the legacy of these lost weapons, how they influence modern nuclear policy, the continuing debates within the military about airborne alerts, and whether there is any serious plan to locate and recover these ghosts of the Cold War, or if, quietly, the decision has been made to let them rust away in the dark. The legacy of the vanished bombs. The lost nuclear weapons of the Cold War are not just dusty footnotes in a classified archive. They are active ghosts that still haunt the corridors of military strategy. Within the Pentagon, debates about how much risk is acceptable have never truly ended. Some senior officers argue that the airborne alert missions, which put nuclear bombs in constant motion, were a necessary evil, an unavoidable trade-off to prevent a Soviet first strike. Others, especially in later decades, point to the missing weapons as proof that the policy was reckless, that the danger of losing control over the arsenal was greater than the deterrent value of keeping it airborne. After the 1968 Thule disaster, political pressure, particularly from Denmark, which had officially banned nuclear weapons from its territory, forced the U.S. to reconsider its 24/7 airborne alerts. Public outrage in allied nations was a warning sign. The Cold War alliance system was strong, but not unbreakable. If the United States was willing to risk scattering radioactive debris over an ally's territory, what else was it hiding? By the late 1970s, official policy shifted toward keeping most nuclear weapons on the ground or in submarines, where they were theoretically less vulnerable to accidents. But the legacy of the earlier decades remains embedded in the ocean floor, in the soil of remote farmland, and perhaps in the locked vaults of foreign intelligence agencies. Modern military thinking. In today's nuclear strategy circles, the missing weapons serve as cautionary tales. They are brought up in training lectures, in classified war games, and in congressional hearings, usually as lessons learned to justify better safety protocols. But even now, the U.S. military maintains that some level of risk is inherent in handling nuclear weapons. Every movement of a warhead from a maintenance facility to a missile silo, from a bomber base to a submarine, introduces the possibility of an accident. Some insiders have quietly admitted that not all weapons are accounted for with the absolute precision that the public imagines. Inventory systems have improved dramatically, but perfect tracking depends on human reliability, and humans are fallible. This is the uncomfortable truth. Even in the most tightly controlled arsenals, mistakes happen. The environmental shadow. The environmental consequences are the least visible but most enduring legacy. In Tybee Island, official testing reports claim no dangerous levels of radioactivity in surrounding waters, but those reports are decades old. Independent testing by environmental activists has sometimes found anomalies, slightly elevated levels of tritium or other isotopes in sediment samples. The government dismisses these as naturally occurring variations, but the pattern of denial feels familiar. In Goldsboro, The no-dig zone over the buried uranium core is a silent monument to the accident. Farmers who own the land are forbidden from disturbing certain areas. The official reasoning is safety, but locals know the truth under their feet lies the remains of a hydrogen bomb that could have erased half the state capital. And then there's the sea. A nuclear bomb on the ocean floor is not inert forever. Seawater corrodes steel and aluminum. Eventually, casings rupture, and whatever remains inside is released into the marine environment. The process may take decades or centuries, but plutonium's half-life is not measured in election cycles. It is measured in geological time. Could they be found? The question is more urgent than it appears. Technology that did not exist in the 1960s is now commonplace. Commercial companies can map the ocean floor in high resolution. Private submersibles can reach depths once accessible only to military submarines. A motivated actor, whether a foreign government or a rogue organization, could, in theory, locate a lost nuclear weapon. This possibility has driven quiet but intense interest from multiple nations in deep-sea salvage capabilities. Publicly, such programs are about recovering sunken ships, downed aircraft, or lost drones. Privately, some experts suspect they are about finding and possibly retrieving nuclear weapons that the original owners have long given up on. The psychological weight. For the average citizen, the idea of a missing nuclear weapon is so far outside daily experience that it feels abstract, almost fictional. But for those who have handled these devices, who have stood on a bomber flight line or in a missile silo, the thought is visceral. These are not theoretical machines. They are real, massive, deadly objects. To know that some are unaccounted for is to live with a permanent unease. This unease extends into international relations. Whenever the subject of nuclear safety is raised at arms control talks, the vanished bombs are the unspoken elephant in the room. How can one preach non-proliferation to emerging nuclear states while quietly admitting that dozens of your own weapons are missing official amnesia? Perhaps the strangest part of the legacy is how quickly each new generation forgets. For those born after the Cold War, the idea that the U.S. lost nuclear bombs sounds like conspiracy theory until they see the declassified documents. Even then, the enormity of the fact is hard to grasp. Our culture is quick to remember dramatic events like Hiroshima or Chernobyl, but the slow, quiet danger of a missing hydrogen bomb rarely makes it into textbooks. This forgetfulness is convenient for policymakers. If the public is not asking where the bombs are, there is no pressure to find them. The accidents slip deeper into history. The files gather dust, and the weapons themselves continue to rust in the dark. A quiet decision. Among some in the defense establishment, there is a belief never officially stated that the best course of action for certain lost weapons is simply to leave them alone. Recovery efforts can be risky, costly, and politically embarrassing. If a bomb is lying at the bottom of the sea, undisturbed, perhaps it is safer to let it stay there forever. But forever is not a concept that works well with human institutions. Governments change, priorities shift, and the oceans are not static. What is safe today may be dangerous tomorrow. A fishing trawler's net, a deep-sea mining operation, or a freak geological event could disturb what has been hidden for decades. The final reckoning. In the end, the story of America's lost nuclear weapons is a story about control and the limits of it. For all the advanced technology, strict protocols, and military discipline, the fact remains some of the deadliest devices ever built slipped through the cracks. They were lost to the sea, to the ice, to the earth, and to our collective memory. The official narrative insists that none of these pose a serious threat today. But the absence of proof is not proof of absence. As long as even one hydrogen bomb remains unaccounted for, the risk is not zero. And that, perhaps, is the real nightmare, not the possibility of a sudden detonation, but the knowledge that the ultimate power to destroy a city can simply disappear in the dark, beneath the waves, under the frozen ice. They wait, not ticking like the clocks of a movie bomb, but lingering silent, patient, enduring. The Cold War may be over, but its most dangerous relics are still out there, rusting slowly, holding secrets that no one is willing to face.